Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya.
भगवान श्री योगी रामसूरतकुमार की जय। सर्वं योगी रामसूरतकुमारार्पणमस्तु। With a grateful submission of all those Nama Pushpas at the lotus feet of Bhagwan, we shall once again go through some of very enjoyable and beautiful scenes that we have come across in Ramayana, how Bhagwan came to reenact, reminding us again and again the essence of his divine being and its manifestation, the divine manifestation. We had before seen on some occasions how Bhagwan used to go about with the staff in hands, a staff of peacock feathers bundled together, and then strings coiling around and hanging on from the tip. And when he wandered the streets of Tiruvannamalai, if you happen to see the old photographs which you find in Kivaja's books, you would see the staff which he held in hand would kind of bend with the string hanging loose, forming the shape of the bow of Lord Rama. It's there even in Kaylor Badlington's book. One can very distinctly see how the staff that he held in those days would bend down in the form of a bow. And often people found him with the bhava of Shikodandapani Rama. I think I had already narrated one of the incidents when Bhagwan was chased by a mob of people who had attended a political meeting in the adjacent Government Arts College playground. How they came and knocked at the door of Sudama violently, and Bhagwan had to go out, and he was being chased by this mob. And we all know the psychology of mob. So Bhagwan simply walked in the front, and there was Sadhu Rangarajan with him, and they were being pushed. And they went on up to the gate of a house of a Ramana devotee. But those people had closed the door and went inside. They saw what was happening, the mob chasing Shri Yogiji. And they locked their door, went inside. So Bhagwan was almost pinned on the gate, unable to move any further. And he was surrounded by this huge mob all around, witnessing the whole show from the corner of the terrace from where I was. I held my breath because anything could happen. The mob could crush him down with their force. And then it happened. The Rama Bhava. Bhagwan took the stick from Sadhu Rangarajan's hand, held it very high, like Sri Rama would hold the bow in his hand. That's all he did. With a certain look on his face. And then the magic happened. The mobs simply moved away in a docile manner. What a miracle. Just one gesture of holding the stick high, like Sri Rama would hold the bow. And people quietly dispersed. So this Rama Bhava often expressed itself in him suitably under circumstances. Sri Shankarajulu, Professor Dr. Shankarajulu, had come to Tiruvannamalai as the principal of the Government Arts College near Ramanashram. I think it was 78 or 79. He had seen many Mahatmas in his life, but he said, after he met Yogi Ramsuratkumar Bhagwan, everything changed about his life. He felt fulfilled by sitting in his presence. And what was more, he took to Nama Chanting. So many fundamental changes happened in his life. Such was the glory and the magnetism, the divine magnetism of Bhagwan. He would run to Bhagwan often whenever he came across a difficult problem with the students. And Bhagwan would advise him aptly, and it helped him a lot. Sri Shankarajulu describes in his article that once he and Sukhavanam found him in the temple, Arunachaleshwara temple. So Swami immediately came out and with them walked over to Sanadi Street House. And then he took out from his deep pocket a bit of paper and said, when this beggar was sitting in Arunachaleshwara Mandir near the tank, this paper came flying and fell upon this beggar. And this beggar saw it. There must have been something from my father. And then this beggar found some numbers, three-digit numbers. And then Bhagwan himself volunteered the information. They could be the numbers of Tirupugal, the songs on Lord Muruga. So he asked Sukhavanam to bring the Tirupugal book from inside. And then they found Bhagwan's statement to be true. And then Bhagwan asked Sri Shankararajalu to sing those songs. Sri Shankararajalu says in his article, a bit of paper, a piece of paper, none of us would have even bothered to look at it, far less understand what is written in it. But here was Swami, who not only preserved it and knew the value of the content, and he knew the exact book, and then he made me and Sukhavanam sing those songs. What a divinity! Isn't this divinity? The all-knowing divinity. Then he says that he understood not a gesture of Bhagavan would ever go waste. That he knew, he always knew everything about everything, and not a gesture would ever go waste. And then at that time, Professor Dr. Rangarajalu was still doing his research work. He was from the Tamil department. He was researching in the songs composed by Tirumangai in Divya Prabandha. Bhagwan would often ask him about his book, about his research, make him sing a song or two now and then, and would enjoy listening to that. So one day, Bhagwan asked him, Shankararajalu, you are doing research in Tirumangai. Is there any mention of any particular event that is not found with any other Alvars, in any other Ramayana also? Some hint, some event of Sri Rama in Tirumangai songs of praise. Dr. Shankararajalu was astounded that Bhagwan should choose to ask this particular question. He could not have asked it innocently. Once again it proved that he was all-knowing. He's from the north, he spoke only Hindi. He picked up Tamil also, local. It did not mean that he had read physically all those books, and yet he was asking the one exact question which no one else did. Yes, there is a mention of a certain event that happened with Rama, which is not mentioned anywhere else. So the surprised Dr. Shankararajalu hastened to say, yes, Swami, there is a very touching, beautiful incident described by Tirumangai which no one else has done. And then he went on to describe. He said, on his return to Ayodhya after the killing of Ravana, after the war, when he was returning to Ayodhya with Hanuman and other monkey soldiers, at one point they entered an ashram and they were all fed. Before feeding, they had put the leaves for everyone to serve food. Very few of them had come with Rama. For those few people, the leaf was laid for the food to follow. And suddenly, they found that one leaf was missing. Everyone had, and Sri Anjaneya was standing last, and there was no leaf for him. It could have been some orchestrated divine leela, a deliberate divine leela, divine demonstration to accentuate the glory of Shri Hanuman. It happened everybody got a leaf except Hanuman. Of course, Hanuman, for him, just looking at Rama was enough. He did not need anything else. But Rama looked at Anjaneya with such pure love and kindness, and immediately said, Anjaneya, come here. It doesn't matter if you don't have a leaf. I have one here, and both of us will share. And then he asked them to serve the food, and he shared both of them. Anjaneya obeyed his master's command, so both of them shared the food from one leaf. It was a very beautiful blessing to Anjaneya, which probably Rama wanted to give, that he might have deliberately arranged for this kind of circumstance as a reward to the devotion of Anjaneya, as a reward to his valorous exploits. So you see how the two, the divinity and the disciple, shared one leaf. Swami was completely absorbed in what he described. He was transported to the exact scene where probably it was the same Chaitanya that had come as Sri Rama there. The Chaitanyam is the same, always unchanging. And then Bhagwan blessed Sri Shankarajulu nicely and left them. A few days after, Sri Shankarajulu goes on describing, a few days after that, one afternoon when he was with Bhagwan at Sanadi Street house, a lady had brought a carrier of food. And there were 4 or 5 of them. When she distributed the leaf, when she laid the leaf for everybody at Bhagwan's command, Sri Shankarajulu was seated last, and there was no leaf for him. One leaf was less. Immediately, Bhagwan smiled and said, Shankarajulu, it doesn't matter. If you don't get a leaf, come here. The 2 of us will share the food from one leaf. The exact reenactment of the play act which happened in Treta Yuga, in Sri Rama's history. It was restructuring, a reconstruction of the same scene, making everybody feel, especially Shankarajulu, who knew the context, that Bhagwan Yogi Ramsuratkumar was none other than Lord Rama. Needless to say, how streams of tears kept pouring from Shankarajulu's eyes. He said, though it was there amrita, the nectar of food I had to share with Lord Rama. I could not bring myself to do it because I was completely, deeply moved, and the tears were streaming down, and I could not see clearly. I was completely overwhelmed with the experience. And then another time, Sri Shankarajulu had taken some school children from Madurai for an excursion to Satanur Dam. He had already written to Swami about his excursion to Tiruvannamalai and Satanur Dam with the school children. I think his daughter was running a school there in Tirunagar, where he lived. And he, with a busload of those students, he landed near Bhagwan's place. Bhagwan came out to see. Sri Shankarajulu thought Bhagwan would bless them all nicely and send them away. But to his delight and surprise, Bhagwan came and boarded the bus. He got seated there and said, Shankarajulu, this beggar is coming with you. Do you mind? Again, imagine the reaction of Sri Shankarajulu, who never expected this fortune, a sudden fortune. And then they pushed off to Satanur Dam. And there wasn't much water, and all the boats were being run by the government. So the time they landed there, none of them was in service. So Bhagwan was wondering how they could go over the waters. And suddenly there was this man from the nearby village. He said, I have a country boat, Swami. I can take you across. They all became very happy. And in the country boat, which is round in shape, and it's called Parisal in Tamil, this village man brought it, and Sri Shankarajulu, his niece, and Bhagwan. All the three boarded it, and then the boatman started to row. Halfway through, there was water everywhere. It was a beautiful scene. Suddenly, Sri Shankarajulu remembered the scene of Sri Rama crossing the Ganges with Guha. Just when he thought about it, Bhagwan smiled at him and said, Shankarajulu, do you remember that scene from Ramayana when Sri Rama was taken across the Ganges by Guha? You can imagine once again how overwhelmed Shankarajulu must have been. He folded his hands with tears in his eyes, and he says he saw Rama sitting there. It was none other than Sri Rama. All of them were transported to Treta Yuga and were seated in the boat, and Bhagwan, Sri Ram, was there. It was once again the reenactment of the scene that one finds in Ramayana. It was Bhagwan's way of showing his true being. Somehow, either the nature or the divinity orchestrated details to create the reenactment of a scene that you find in Ramayana. So you see, there have been many devotees who had felt the presence of Rama in him. I remember in Sudama also once, Sudama, we wouldn't know the passing of days. We did not know what day it was, what date it was. But we would be busy all the time, engaged in his service. Though, of course, every day there was a calendar right in front of Bhagwan, and I had to tear the sheet of the calendar every day in the morning, first thing. It was about 2:30 or 2:45. I was sitting there doing my japa, and Bhagwan was still lying down. A little distance away, the two watchmen were lying down. It's all in the veranda of Sudama. And suddenly, I found a green glow of light. Bhagwan was still lying down, apparently asleep. And there was this green glow all around him, which reminded me of Sri Rama's color as spoken of in the scriptures. I was wondering, because I was suddenly seized by this Rama consciousness, a stream of Rama consciousness. I was wonderstruck. I got up a little later. It lasted only a few seconds. After that, it was once again Bhagwan lying down. After he woke up, I had to do, as always I did in the morning, I had to tear the sheet. So when I tore it off to bring the new sheet, the sheet for the day, the date for the day, I found to my great delight and surprise, it was Ram Navami day. There was such strong current of Rama consciousness in the atmosphere. People must have been celebrating it everywhere in India. One could feel the presence of Rama in the atmosphere. And then I understood why Bhagwan had this divine glow around him. And that is when it struck me, Rama's skin was not green the way it has been described. It must have been the glow of his skin. When we say Sri Krishna had blue color, it's not that his skin was blue. He must have looked very different from others if he had blue skin. I felt after seeing what happened, it is the glow, the tejas of the skin, the tejas of the personality. That is light. It could have any color. And probably Sri Rama was glowing just as Bhagwan did that day. He was glowing with a green color, and that is how the description found its way into the scriptures. So you see, from time to time, we got glimpses of Yogi Ramsuratkumar Bhagwan as Lord Rama himself. Now that Bhagwan is here in front of us. On the 14th, this coming 14th, we have Ram Navami day. All of us will have to celebrate it. No, I think probably after that, in April, sometime, some date it is. Generally it falls in the month of April. So we should submit today's prayers at the feet of Bhagwan. Bhagwan, we know who you are, and only you can bring about a change in the world that the world needs very badly. Just as you killed Ravana as Sri Rama, it is time for killing this Rakshasa, Corona. Ravana and Corona, they sound alike. They rhyme. Bhagwan, we seek your kind, immediate divine intervention for the samharam of this Corona Rakshas, to free the entire humanity from the atrocities he is causing around. Please bring back the normalcy in every aspect of life, everywhere. Uproot the fear from the hearts of people. Stop the spread of the disease. Enter the medicines so that they would kill this virus and its whole family. And please protect all those sevaks who are laboring day and night at the very risk of their life in order to save other lives. And we seek your blessings for a lift to economy. Above all, we need a special grace from you for constant remembrance of your name and to go about our lives as fitting instruments in your hand. And let's do it with gratitude to all, for all the blessings that we have received from you always. And Bhagwan, the most important of all, that we should evolve. We have been distinguishing the good from the bad, the black from the white, the good from the evil. Now we should grow up fast so that at one point the differences between the beauty and the ugly, the good and the bad, will dissolve, and we would be able to see only your beauty in everything, your grace in everything. Jai Yogi Ramsuratkumar.